My name is Madison Hayes, and if you met me today, you'd think I was the kind of woman who always had her life together. The kind who steps into a boardroom with her head high, silk blouse tucked neatly into tailored pants, heels clicking against marble floors like punctuation marks of confidence. My apartment, my sanctuary, sits high above the city, with glass windows spilling sunlight across a space I once only dreamed of. But appearances? They're only half the truth. This morning, as I sat at my kitchen counter sipping coffee from a mug I bought in Paris, my phone buzzed with the kind of message that makes your stomach clench even before you read it. It was from my mother. Your sister needs a place to stay. She'll be moving in with you next week. Clear out the guest room.
Just like that.
No question mark. No request. Just an order, delivered as casually as a grocery list. For a moment, I let out a quiet laugh. The old me, the girl desperate for approval, the one they called too stubborn and too selfish, might have argued, cried, or tried to explain why I couldn't. But that girl doesn't live here anymore. I set my mug down, smoothed the sleeve of my blouse, and walked to my desk. The lease sat neatly in a folder, proof of a life I'd built on my own. Proof that no one, not even my parents, dictated where I stood. I slipped it into my bag, grabbed my keys, and headed out the door.
Calm.
Collected.
Ready.
Years before that calm morning, I was anything but calm. I was 21, sitting at the edge of my twin-sized bed in my parents' house in Ohio, clutching a suitcase I had half-packed. My mother's voice cut through the hallway like a sharp blade. Madison, stop being dramatic. Your sister needs support, and you're not doing anything important with your life anyway. Her words landed heavier than the books stacked in my bag. I had just told them that I wanted to move out, to find my own apartment closer to the city, closer to opportunity. But instead of encouragement, I got the same refrain I'd heard all my life. Be responsible for your sister, not yourself. My younger sister, Claire, was standing behind her, arms crossed, lips curled in a smug little smile. She was 18 then, the golden child, the one they believed could do no wrong. If she wanted a ride, I had to drive her. If she needed money, I had to lend it. If she broke something, I took the blame. I swallowed hard, the lump in my throat making it nearly impossible to speak. My father didn't even look up from his armchair, just muttered, "You'll regret this selfish phase." Family comes first. But I wasn't blind anymore. Family, in their definition, meant me sacrificing and them taking. That night, as I sat in my room shaking, I opened the drawer of my nightstand and pulled out a small leather notebook. It had been a gift from my grandmother before she passed. Inside the cover, in her looping cursive, she had written, "Write your own story, sweetheart. Don't let anyone else hold the pen." I remember tracing those words with trembling fingers, my tears dripping onto the page. Something in me shifted. I realized that if I didn't leave now, I would never leave. So, with my bag half-sipped and my heart pounding, I walked out of that house. My mother shouted my name, Claire laughed like it was a game, and my father just shook his head. But I kept walking, notebook clutched to my chest like a shield. That night, I slept on a friend's couch, surrounded by uncertainty, fear, and silence. But deep down, under the ache in my chest, was a flicker of something else.
Hope.
And for the first time in my life, it was mine alone. The weeks after I left home were some of the hardest of my life. My friend's couch was lumpy, the apartment drafty, and I lived out of one suitcase. I picked up a part-time job at a diner, serving endless cups of coffee to tired truckers and cranky office workers. The smell of grease clung to my clothes no matter how many times I washed them. But in those endless nights, wiping down counters at 2 a.m., I began to believe in the words written in that leather notebook. Write your own story. I saved every tip I could, even when it meant skipping meals. Within 3 months, I scraped together enough for the deposit on a tiny studio apartment. It wasn't glamorous. The walls were thin, the heater clanged like an old radiator, and the only window looked out onto a brick alleyway, but it was mine. That same year, I enrolled in night classes for business administration at the community college. I would serve hash browns in the morning, study balance sheets in the afternoon, and type essays at midnight with chipped nail polish and a half-eaten granola bar at my side. It wasn't easy. I doubted myself constantly. Every time I opened my empty fridge, every time another bill came in, I heard my father's voice. You'll regret this selfish phase. But slowly, small victories began to stack up. My first A in accounting. My first paycheck that covered rent and groceries. The first time I treated myself to a fresh cup of coffee that wasn't from the diner pot. And then came Mrs. Reynolds. She was a sharp, silver-haired woman who owned a small consulting firm. She came into the diner every Thursday, always ordering black coffee and a toasted bagel. One morning, she noticed me scribbling notes between tables and asked what I was studying. When I shyly told her business administration, she smiled.
Good.
This world needs more women who understand numbers and don't apologize for it. That simple sentence lit something inside me. Mrs. Reynolds began giving me small projects at her firm, organizing files, proofreading reports. She paid me fairly, but more than that, she believed in me. She treated me like I had potential, not like I was a burden. Within a year, she offered me a junior analyst position. I cried the first night I saw my name on the office door plate, even if it was just temporary. From there, the climb was relentless. Long nights, endless spreadsheets, learning to stand my ground in meetings full of men who underestimated me. I stumbled, made mistakes, and sometimes cried in the bathroom when it felt too heavy. But I never gave up. Piece by piece, dollar by dollar, I built a new life. I upgraded apartments, from that crumbling studio to a modest one-bedroom, then finally to the glass-walled sanctuary I lived in now. My parents, of course, never knew the details. When they called, I kept conversations vague. On social media, I posted quiet sunsets, coffee cups, nothing too revealing. Let them think I was just managing. Because the truth that I was thriving, that I was stronger than they ever imagined, was mine to reveal when the time was right. And that moment was closer than they realized. The drive to my parents' house was quiet, almost meditative. My heels clicked lightly against the accelerator pedal, my hands steady on the leather steering wheel. I had rehearsed my words in my head 1,000 times, but the truth was, I didn't really need to rehearse. The lease would speak for me. When I arrived, the scene was exactly as I imagined. My mother was bustling around the living room, carrying a pile of my neatly folded sweaters, her voice laced with false cheer. "Madison, I just want to make this easy for you," she said, placing the stack on the sofa like a gift. My father leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, his eyes scanning me as if trying to measure how much I had failed, or so he thought. And there was Claire, sitting on the armchair, tapping her phone impatiently, that smug little expression that had haunted my dreams for years. I took a deep breath. Calm, I reminded myself. Calm, like I had practiced. "Hi," I said lightly, setting my bag on the table. My parents' heads snapped toward me, their expressions a mix of expectation and annoyance. "I got your message." You understand she can't just move in here?" My mother asked, her voice tight, faltering slightly. I smiled. "Yes, I understand. But there's a small problem." From my bag, I pulled out the folder. The smooth paper of the lease felt almost weightless in my hands, but the words on it carried years of struggle, sweat, and self-respect. I laid it flat on the coffee table, sliding it toward them. They stared, puzzled. My father picked it up, squinting. This says what I think it says." "Yes," I said. "This is my apartment. I signed the lease. The terms are mine, the ownership is mine. And it's not a guest room I'm offering anyone. It's my home." Silence fell over the room like a heavy curtain. My mother's hands trembled slightly as she tried to gather her thoughts. Claire's phone dropped from her hand, eyes wide, jaw slack. My father's mouth opened and closed, the words trapped somewhere between disbelief and shame. I walked slowly around the room, letting them take it all in. The sunlight streaming through the windows hit the hardwood floors just right, glinting off the small sculptures and art pieces I had bought for my apartment, my first big wins that no one had seen. This was my sanctuary, my story, and it was standing tall. Finally, I spoke again, voice calm but firm. I didn't fight to be independent, so I could hand over everything I've built. I wanted a life of my own, one where I make decisions, where I am respected. And here it is. My mother's eyes filled with tears, guilt and realization warring in her expression. Claire looked down at her lap, no smugness left. My father rubbed the back of his neck, silent, as if the weight of his assumptions had suddenly become unbearable. I paused, letting the room breathe in the shock, the awe, the shame. Then I smiled, almost gently. I know you didn't expect this, I said. And that's okay. But I think it's time we all started seeing each other clearly. Not the versions we wanted to believe, but the real ones. And with that, I let the moment settle, letting them digest the reality. The little girl they once dismissed had grown into a woman they couldn't ignore, couldn't control, and most importantly, couldn't underestimate. The room was quiet now, but not empty. Not really. The air was thick with realization, with the weight of years spent under assumptions and unfair expectations. I had the upper hand, yet for the first time in my life, I didn't feel the urge to gloat. This was about clarity, about boundaries, about growth. I took a slow step forward, letting my eyes meet each of theirs in turn. I'm willing to help, I said, my voice calm, even firm. But only if certain things change. My mother's brow furrowed. Change, she whispered. Yes, I said. We all need boundaries. Claire, if you want to stay with me, you have to contribute, rent, groceries, responsibilities. You can't just show up expecting everything to be handed to you. And you need to start taking steps toward your independence. School, a job, anything that builds your own future. Claire looked down at her hands, silence stretching between us. I knew this wasn't easy for her, but this wasn't about comfort. It was about learning to stand on her own. I turned to my mother. And you both, I said, nodding at her and my father, need to stop comparing your daughters. Stop ranking us. Stop measuring us against each other. I can't erase the past, but we can create a future where respect matters more than favoritism. My father's jaw tightened. You're serious about this? I nodded. I am. I care about both of you, but I will not bend to old patterns. If we continue, it has to be on terms that respect me and each of you as individuals. No more control, no more guilt, no more assumptions. The room felt heavy but lighter at the same time. Heavy because accountability always carries weight. Lighter because for the first time, honesty wasn't a weapon, it was a bridge. Madison, my mother's voice trembled. We just wanted to help. I know, I said softly. And I forgive you. But help without boundaries isn't help. It's control. And I'm done letting anyone control my life. I took a deep breath, letting the words settle. If we do this, truly support each other, it will be different. Claire will have to earn her place here. You will have to see her and me as equals, not favorites and underdogs. And we'll all need to let go of the toxic patterns that have been holding us back. My father finally spoke, quieter than usual. We will try. That's all I ask, I said, feeling a strange warmth spreading through me. Not triumph, not revenge, but pride, the pride of having drawn a line, of having taken control. For once, my life wasn't someone else's story.
It was my own.
I looked at Claire, and despite everything, I smiled. We'll figure this out, I said. Together, but on terms that honor who we really are. And in that moment, the balance had shifted. I wasn't the daughter under scrutiny anymore. I wasn't the little girl who left home clutching a notebook. I was Madison Hayes, independent, unwavering, and capable of holding both compassion and firmness in one hand. Weeks passed after that day, and the air in our family home began to change, subtly at first, like sunlight slipping through heavy curtains. Claire started looking for jobs, timid at first, then with a growing determination that made me smile secretly. She asked for advice, and I gave it freely, but always with boundaries in place. She learned that independence wasn't a threat, it was a gift. My parents, too, began to adjust. Conversations no longer carried hidden comparisons or sharp criticisms. My mother asked questions about my work, genuinely interested, not just as a passing remark. My father started listening, really listening without judgment. It was imperfect, messy, and sometimes awkward, but it was progress. One evening, after a particularly long day at the office, I found myself sitting at the kitchen table with my grandmother's leather notebook open in front of me. The edges were worn, pages slightly yellowed, and the words still glimmered in silver ink. Write your own story, sweetheart. Don't let anyone else hold the pen. I ran my fingers over the letters, remembering the trembling hands and lump in my throat from all those years ago. I smiled softly. The girl who left home scared and uncertain had grown into the woman she was meant to be. Strong, independent, calm, but still compassionate. For a moment, I allowed myself to reflect on the journey. The nights spent scrubbing dishes, the lectures and dismissals, the fear of failure, the taste of small victories. Every hardship had been a brick in the foundation of who I had become. I closed the notebook and placed it gently on the shelf, a symbol of resilience and love that had guided me. That night, as I stepped onto the balcony of my apartment, city lights stretching endlessly beneath me, I felt the quiet satisfaction of owning my life completely. I thought of my parents, of Claire, of the choices and sacrifices that had brought me here. And for the first time in a long time, I felt truly free. Because freedom isn't just about leaving, it's about standing tall, claiming your space, and holding on to the power to decide who you allow in and on what terms. And as the wind lifted softly across the balcony, brushing my face, I whispered to myself, a quiet declaration more than a thought. When they ordered me to let my sister move in, I didn't fight. I showed them the lease and walked out calmly. Because this life, this story, it's mine and no one else's to write.